Alright, so you guys knew that this video was gonna come out sooner or later. So back in 1994, Electronic Arts came out with 2 non-basketball games that featured famous basketball stars. And to say that these games are pretty bad would be an understatement. Honestly, in hindsight, I've got no idea what in the world they were thinking. I mean, do you really want to play a fighting game as Shaquille O'Neal? Do you really want to play like a crappy Mario clone as Michael Jordan? Like, really? Like, we couldn't have, you know, a basketball game? I mean, seriously, what happened here? So, as you guys already know, EA Sports didn't exactly have the best record for basketball video games in the early 1990s. I mean, maybe you like watching Team USA walk the ball up the court like this, but personally, I find this game impossible to, like, sit through. And for years, this is the best that we had. And the thing is that all of the video game magazines back in late 1994 swore to us that these games were great. Like I've said before, there is some pretty good evidence that EA was buying up positive reviews back in those days. That's kind of like what EA does today, come to think of it. Anyway, you would think that Electronic Arts would focus all of its resources on making a good basketball game, right? Why come out with the fighting game and the adventure game? The first thing you need to know is that NBA Showdown, the last of EA's older style basketball games, actually wasn't that bad. Though it still has those stupid marquee moves, at least the game was fast and somewhat playable, though personally I hate it. NBA Live 95 came out around October 1994, however, and this game was simply revolutionary. In my opinion, this is where the modern era of basketball games really begins. But for whatever reason, Electronic Arts decided to use this exclusive contract with both Shaq and Michael Jordan to make these non-basketball games. And yeah, these games are weird. Let's start with the Michael Jordan game first. So as you guys already know, Michael Jordan was not an NBA Jam, and no, there is no code to magically get him, I'm sorry. If you actually want to play as Jordan, your best bet is to download NBA Jam Special Edition, the arcade version. This uses rare code that was present on the exclusive NBA Jam machine that Michael Jordan himself owned. And yeah, this game is as much fun as it looks. In hindsight, though, Jordan's insistence on getting his own special rights contract apart from the NBA PA was probably sort of a mistake. I mean, sure, he earned like $1 bajillion for doing it, right? That part makes sense. But he missed out on NBA Jam. That, to this day, is still the most popular sports arcade game of all time, and is always going to be that way because who plays arcade games anymore, right? Money can buy you a lot of things, but it cannot buy you a slot in NBA Jam. Anyway, Michael Jordan announced that he was retiring from basketball on October 6, 1993, which created a problem for Electronic Arts. EA had already made a Michael Jordan exclusive basketball game in 1993, and I guess it's okay if you like this kind of game. Personally, I think this game is awful, but you can also see why EA was thinking about working with Jordan on another video game. But the problem is that Michael Jordan wasn't a basketball player anymore. I mean, maybe they could have done Jordan's version of NBA Jam, you know, sort of like they did with Charles Barkley, that Accolade game, Shut Up and Jam, right? But for one reason or another, they decided that it would be better to make a really crappy platformer starring Michael Jordan. So there's this bizarre storyline behind this game. Somebody like kidnaps him or something. You have to scroll through it to read it like a comic book. It's really bad. Then you have a bunch of levels in each world or something, whatever. The bizarre storyline here is your first clue that something is really off. I mean, I guess they had to do something to somehow justify Jordan being shoved into a world of monsters and giant spiders with only an unlimited supply of basketballs to defend himself. And I'm not kidding when I say that. The basketballs are like your gun, and there are these random basketball hoops that give you stuff when you dunk. I mean, it's creative, I'll give you that, but this is bizarre, isn't it? It's not just like a platformer, it's also like a really generic platformer. The only thing that makes it different from the dozens and dozens of other platformers out there with like big spiders and bats and stuff is the fact that you're Michael Jordan and that you dunk the ball here and there. Now, the one thing you need to learn is that there are two different ways to jump in this game, which itself is bizarre. So as you can see here, there are two different kinds of jumps. There's the normal jump and there's the slam jump. So if you want to slam dunk, you have to push the slam jump button first and then the shoot button at the right angle. I mean, isn't that strange? Like, I think the control on games like Team USA Basketball, I think the control is just awful. But at least there's only a single jump button in that game, not like two different ones. I mean, seriously, why do that? Why do you have to have two different jump buttons on this thing, right? Do you have to use like every single one of these buttons, right? You can't just have one jump, you gotta have two? Like, why? Now, there are a bunch of doors that you need certain keys to open, like these silver ones. You use these keys to open doors, and sometimes you run into a bad guy. Sometimes, though, you wind up finding what the game calls a captive, which is always a basketball player. Now, he doesn't give you any useful information, but it gives you at least someone to talk to. Anyway, that's basically how this game works. Everything else is just really generic platformer stuff. It's just like most of the games that you've probably already played. So you wind up spending a bunch of time hopping around and going on platforms and stuff like that. You wind up running around killing bad guys, looking for captives, and trying to find the exit. You can also grab onto hooks to move from one place to the other, which I guess is what the other jump button is there for. So the big question here is, why in the world would they need Michael Jordan for a game like this? I mean, they could have made the exact same game with any other basketball star, or with, like, what's the guy's name? Like Aaron Morris, that dude in NBA Jam, right? Sure, like, the basketball elements might not make sense if you put, like, Mario in there or something like that. But then again, the basketball elements in this game were put in just totally at random. It's almost like they had this generic platformer ready, and like then they got the Michael Jordan contract and they were like, great, let's just slap some basketball in there and we'll try to make the marketing make more sense that way. The more that I play this game, the more that it reminds me of other games that I've played before, and some of these selections might seem a little bit strange to you. So the general platforming aspects of this game and some of the way the graphics are, it reminds me a lot of the Genesis version of Aladdin, though Aladdin has better play control and much better graphics. The rendering of Michael Jordan is sort of like the Mortal Kombat style of rendering, though it's not as good as this, because this is the arcade version. The idea of creating a game based on specific aspects of a celebrity's life is a lot like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. But the game that this one really reminds me the most of is a game that's probably going to surprise you, and I'll try to explain this. The way that this game actually feels when you control it, it reminds me a lot of the old Jill of the Jungle game, the old MS-DOS game that was made by Epic Games back in like 1992 or so. So shout out to anybody who remembers screens like this. This really takes me back. Anyway, Jill of the Jungle uses a completely different attack system, of course. There's tons of differences here. But the stiff jumping and the really annoying parts of Chaos in the Windy City, that reminds me a lot of this. Honestly, though, I think Jill of the Jungle is the better game. At least it's not boring me to death. Chaos in the Windy City just gets on my nerves. And there's one thing about this game that really pisses me off. I think I'm getting this right here. Maybe it's wrong. You can tell me how to do it. Like, based on what I understand, you can only hold one key at a time. So if you look in the upper right corner, you can see I've got the red key right now, right? Once I've used it, because there's only one, I'm back to these golden keys, but I can't use like both of them at the same time. And there are times like right here where you've got the right key, but you can't use it because it's not selected or something. Anyway, that's the thing that stopped me from finishing this game. Now, as usual, this might be because of user error, right? This happens a lot. I didn't read, enough of the manual or whatever, so let me know if I got it wrong. But, like, seriously, could you imagine playing, like, Doom, where you could only hold one key card at a time? Like, could you imagine that? That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I mean, this is not the worst platformer ever. It's really not even close. But seriously, don't play this. Go play Aladdin on Genesis instead. Anyway, speaking of Genesis, there was apparently a plan for a Sega port of this game. They had ads like this, as well as kind of a crappy mock-up of the box art. And this post from 2010 on some website, I'm not sure which, indicates that a beta version of this game does exist, though I don't know if anybody owns it or if the ROM was ever, actually dumped. So the rumor is that EA decided not to go ahead with the Genesis port because the Super NES version, totally bombed. Nobody bought it. Plus, of course, EA was also busy dealing with the fallout from Shaq Fu, which was another mess that was released the same month as Chaos in the Windy City. I mean, the idea of a fighting game involving Shaq is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Now, Shaq, of course, was a huge star even in his rookie year. Of course, it's not like he was out there doing kung fu when he was playing basketball, but it is clear that he was big, strong, and agile. And he really was crazy good, even as a rookie. Shaq also came out with a rap album right around the time this game was released. It was called Shaq Fu: The Return. And I'll be honest with you guys, Shaq really is, and was at that time as well, a very talented guy. I mean, his music sold very, very well, and it sounds really good. The only problem is that this game just wasn't good. That's all there is to it. So there's some bizarre, convoluted story here where Shaq is in Tokyo and stumbles into some sort of kung fu thing or something. Greetings, big warrior from the stars. Yeah, you gotta love that dialogue. Anyway, Shaq goes through a portal in the back for some random reason to save somebody or something. And the Super NES version has that famous line, Shaq enters the second world. Yeah, when you think about it, this makes sense, right? So we're in the first world here where we have to put up with these ridiculously bad games. The second world, however, that's where all the action happens. All you gotta do is find one of those portals like you're in Narnia or something, or Stargate or one of those things. Anyway, Shaq ends up fighting against some girl with a tail, and I've got to assume that she's also 7 feet tall since they're clearly the same height. Now, if you play the Super NES version, you're going to get frustrated really quickly. That's because the controls are totally delayed beyond anything you can comprehend. So do yourself a favor and don't touch the Super NES version. Go straight to the Genesis, don't pass Go, don't even think about Nintendo, don't collect 200. Just remember, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. The Genesis version is a lot more responsive and it actually feels like, a fighting game. Sure, the sprites are kind of on the small side of things, but it's not as hideously bad as the Super NES version. Shaq has 2 special moves that he can do, which really sucks because everybody else has 3, but whatever. However, I discovered that the best way to play this game is just to keep kicking the crap out of your opponents. And seriously, what kind of image is this for kids, right? Shaq beating up a cat girl? I mean, I know that most of these fighting games had male and female characters together fighting against each other, sure, whatever. But isn't it really strange to you that Shaquille O'Neal, the famous NBA star, one of the most famous players in the world at this time, isn't it strange that Shaq is in a game where he beats up a cat girl? I mean, that just ain't right. Anyway, you've also got this screen in between levels that reminds me of the first Commander Keen game. You kick all the bad guys around and you keep playing until you either win or you get tired. There's really not that much variety, everything's just about the same. I'll tell you one thing, this game absolutely did not make anybody who worked on Street Fighter 2 worried, not even for a second. So is this the worst game of all time? Probably not. Is this one of the worst games of all time? Also probably not. But there have been publications that have claimed that. And you guys probably remember that there was this guy a couple years ago who was trying to destroy every single copy of Shaq Fu in existence. Now, good luck, bro. I mean, so Chaos in the Windy City, that didn't sell well at all. Shaq Fu sold like crazy so what happened back in 94 is you want to get your kid a fighting game and you've got Clay Fighter or you've got Shaq Fu and you're like, well, this one has Shaq in it, I'm going to buy this for Christmas, right? And it's a shame because then Clay Fighter was the game that didn't sell that well and is worth a lot of money and Shaq Fu is really common, right? I mean, seriously, you want to destroy all of these? Good luck, bro. That's like trying to buy up every 1990 Topps baseball card in existence. It's impossible. There's way too many of them out there and they spawn. I swear, these things spawn. So for example, issue number 100 of Nintendo Power was filled with lists of like the best and worst Nintendo games of all time and so on. So you've got stuff in here like the best codes ever, right? So check this out. NBA Jam's Always on Fire code made the list. That's pretty cool, eh? They had the 100 best games ever, and come on, Mario 64 is not better than Mario 3. And then concealed by this crazy background, they had the 10 worst games of all time. Well, you've got to admire their honesty, right? Anyway, both of our games wound up making this list. Chaos in the Windy City made number 7. So the name of the game is not spelled correctly, right? They wrote it wrong. The text is like unreadable. It talks about this one deserving the award for totally blowing the best license in the universe. Meanwhile, Shaq Fu made number 3, just behind Barbie Supermodel. And yeah, there's no way to come up with a stranger idea than having Shaq go to another dimension to battle random people. So are these games really that bad? Personally, I don't think so. Now, Shaq Fu on the Super NES is horrible, but the Genesis version actually is pretty playable. It's in the bottom half of fighting games, but that's all, right? This is not like bottom of the barrel stuff. There's some really bad games out there, right? And for Chaos in the Windy City, while it's a game that I never want to play again for the rest of my life, that's a long way away from the worst platformer I've ever played. Anyway, personally, I think both these games are below average, and I think that Electronic Arts was, smoking crack. But what do you guys think, right? Am I being too easy on these games, or am I being too harsh? Let me know down below.